Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Stories, legends and spoopy stuff related to Latin America. Since X loves its skinwalkers too much, here comes some info about Nagualas. Much like the skinwalkers from Native American folklore, Nagualas are sorcerers or witch doctors who possess the ability of turning into animals at will. While most are known for turning into large, black dogs, donkeys, owls or turkeys, some of them can even turn into bulls, horses, jaguars and pumas. The word supposedly comes from the Aztec word, Nahuali, which means cloth or skin, and makes reference to a man's ability to turn into an animal or an animal-human hybrid, while in certain ethnic groups or languages also refers to necromancy, black magic or malice. For some pre-Columbian cultures, the Nahual is also known as Tlahuelpuchi, which means owlman, and indicative of these creatures appearing only at night. Cultures aside from Aztecs and Mayas, like the Yaquis, Tarahumaras and Seris, most of them used to live in northern Mexico and the southern United States, had Nahualas, but their legends say that if a man knows his primal spirit or Nahual, he could use it to heal people and become a magician. In Aztec mythology, Nahualas were protected by Tezcatlipoca, the god of war and sacrifice, and the legend goes that a Nahual could tear his own skin off and transform into a beast. There are popular stories in Mexico dating from time as early as the Spanish conquest, talking about hunters killing an animal at night, only to find by dawn that it had transformed into a man. Even today, Mexican people still consider Nahualas as something that exist, and there's hundreds of stories talking about encounters with all sorts of supernatural black beasts with red eyes, a common trait in Nahualas. Pick related.
I have a story on Nahualas which I didn't know they exist until a few years ago. Be me turning 15 years old. Mom's family is of the Mixteco race, but we live modernly and don't usually interact with our indigenous family because we live in California, not Oaxaca. I spent a month in Oaxaca with my grandpa and family. Grandpa takes me hunting and I had never used a gun before. Be us deep in the wilderness of the Oaxacan forest. Grandpa has been a hunter all his life and he's a native. He can follow animals and detect things and everything. Before I continue, I'd like to say that I'm afraid of owls. I've been attacked by two. Once when I was a baby and another one when I was 10. I have a huge scar on my scalp and I lost a piece of my lip. I think they're majestic, but I don't know why they attacked me, maybe until that day. Deep in the woods I am holding a gun which I shot several times before heading in to familiarize with it, and Grandpa with a rifle. A noise is heard. Grandpa calculates a jaguar or maybe an armadillo and asks me to make my way 50 meters in front of him in the woods so we can localize it better. I'm all nervous and excited and I make my way inside the woods making as little noise as I can. A deep fog starts noticing around, and I mean a very deep fog starts covering all the place. I don't even know what now. I try to follow Grandpa's commands and squat in the distance behind some bushes. 15 minutes later, Grandpa? I call and I hear nothing back. I call her again, getting kind of desperate now. I hear no reply. An owl flies to a near branch, an adult white owl. I get more nervous now and I try to scare it away, but it would just stare at me. I hear Grandpa calling my name and approaching. I stand up and call, "Grandpa?" No reply. He's just calling my name over and over again. The owl starts moving nervously. I hear Grandpa's voice again, but it sounds weird and the bird stares at me as if it were asking for help. That's the only way I can describe it. Somehow I decided to wait for Grandpa to get really close. He gets close, but it's not Grandpa. A tapir. I don't know what I'm doing now. The fog is really dense and it raises at least 2 feet from the ground. I start to get really scared and I want to cry when I see that big black thing walking its way through the woods calling my name. It gets really close, like 10 meters away now. I'm kind of getting uneased here while riding. I take the gun and I want to shoot, but I can't switch the lock. Hands all sweaty. Beast approaching. Owl starts making loud noises like squealing. The tapir faces it on a branch and calls my name again. The bird looks into my eyes and flies to the beast's face and attacks his eyes furiously. Black blood everywhere, and I'm sure it was black blood almost like Chinese ink. I ran my way out of the scene and forgot the gun there. Fucking animal starts running after me, but the owl attacks its face and chips away pieces of flesh. My name gets distorted in a very high-pitched voice. I'm running as fast as I can. Tapir trips and owl keeps attacking its face. I hear a big crunch and I see the tapir killing the owl in a single bite. Fucking horrible scene. I hope no one gets to see anything like this. Grandpa comes and starts shooting the animal. He lands 2 big shots while telling me to stay on the ground. High-pitched voice becomes really loud and black ink blood everywhere. The tapir rams into the woods and Grandpa takes me to the scene. 2 hot bullets lie on the ground and he tells me it was not an animal. He then takes the carcass of the white owl and tells me that this wasn't an animal either. He says it was a relative of ours, but he's gone by now. I cried all the way to my family's home and Grandpa tells the story to everyone. They make a ritual for the owl and there's a picture of my grandpa's brother who he believes possessed the owl. Never came back to Oaxaca.
I have relatives in Oaxaca too. It didn't happen to me, but Uncle is the son of wealthy ranch owners. Spends his time partying and doing shit. Gets a woman pregnant. He decides not to marry her. The woman's mother is rumored to be a witch. She also sells meat at the local market. Uncle goes to buy some meat for a party. Old woman reminds him to take care of her daughter, as she is pregnant. Uncle doesn't care. Woman says he can't ignore her forever. Be partying in the ranch. One of his friends is leaving. He is too drunk. Uncle decides to ride on horseback with him, in case he didn't remember the way. They ride through some woods in the middle of the night, when suddenly their horses get scared and start jumping and shit. They try to regain control, but the drunk friend falls down and his horse runs away. My uncle descends from his horse to help him. Uncle's horse screams in pain and runs away. Uncle gets scared. He feels something climbing on his leg. He tries to kick it with no results. He sees a big-ass snake has his leg trapped. He tries to run but falls down. The snake advances all the way to his neck. The snake bites his neck. In a way that it didn't pierce it with fangs and it didn't cause any damage. Like just posing its lips around it. Then it leaves my uncle and goes away through the woods. My uncle and his friend walk the rest of the path on foot and were scared. He stays at a friend's house. Next morning, he decides to return home through normal streets in town, not the damned woods. Just on curiosity, he goes to see the old woman in the market. She's there. He greets her and she tells him he seems scared. He says he had a strange night. She tells him she hopes last night's warning was enough. And that she didn't like to drag her body through the woods, but if he made her do that again she would kill him. He decides to take care of the pregnant woman and his child.
Latin American Anon here. Costa Rica. I can do a TLDR of 2 stories that happened to me. I posted them about a year ago, I think. One was about Satanists doing shit in my neighborhood and another was about a guy that nearly kidnapped or killed all my class when I was a kid in school. No paranormal stuff though. Just bad people doing bad stuff on my watch. Oh okay. Again sorry for broken, bad English. The first story was when I was a kid in school, 3rd grade.
Like I said, I posted this before on X. Anyway, have any of you heard of the DARE programs against drugs? Basically, an anti-drug organization called DARE hired people to go to poor schools, talk to the kids about how drugs were bad, etc. DARE always used to send the same guy to our school every year. He was a good-natured fat guy on his advanced 40s. Even used a DARE uniform which was very old. You could easily tell he was a poor as fuck like us. However, always used his own money to buy candies for us. One year he didn't show up. On his place another guy came. From here, Greentext. New guy reports on the school to give the DARE anti-drugs talks. He looks somewhat young, like in his late 20s at most. He is not using a DARE uniform. Even more, he is carrying a real gun on a side of his chest. He is very aggressive and told us he was a top-class agent from our country, and that we were all lucky to even meet him in person. All of us were like, shit friend, this guy is badass. Lady teacher has some disbelief on her face. New guy says that fat good guy retired and he was his replacement. He came during all the week to give us talks. Every time he talked about very crude themes like death, assault, weapons, which disturbed some of the kids. Then he talked about how we should go with him to the secret training grounds, in order to become stronger if we feared the real world. He said he would let us even use real weapons like rocket launchers and AK-47s if we accepted. Basically, we needed to get inside a bus with black sealed windows, and we couldn't tell under any circumstances to our parents where we were going. The bus was going to come at the end of the week. The day before bus came, he crossed the line. He basically one of the girls from our class in front of us, trying to show us how we should search female cavities for drug. Our lady teacher was really freaking out seeing how that guy was fingering a girl in front of everyone. She asked the guy to back off and stop for the day. There was a clear tension, but he agreed to leave and asked us to come tomorrow to join the bus. Lady teacher went fast to talk to the other teachers and the director about the issue. She was nearly crying. Then she and the director came to the class and told us to not join the bus tomorrow. The next day, after all the kids entered the school, the teachers closed the school gates. The guy came naturally and asked to enter. All the teachers, some parents and the director told him to fuck off, or that the cops were on their way, or that they were going to call them. The dude is mad as fuck but goes to the bus and gets away. Lady teacher later comes to the class and told us that the bad guy is not coming back. Next year a normal DARE guy comes to give normal talks. Never knew what exactly happened with fat good guy. Time later I asked my lady teacher if she knew, and she told me that she and the director called DARE to know why he didn't show up in the first place the year of that weird incident after everything got solved. However, they told her that fat guy went missing that year and that's why they could send him. To this day I still think that the weird guy that came to our class killed fat guy, and wanted to take our whole class somewhere to assault us or something.
In Chiloé, Chile, South America, we have a legend about a strange creature named El Trauco. The Trauco is a mythical entity who inhabits the woods of Chiloé, an island in the south of Chile. He is small and disgusting. He only is 80 centimeters tall, he does not have feet, it's like he is an amputated man. His clothes are made of plants, specifically a twining plant, and use a hat made of plants too. With his power, he can destroy bones only with the first sight. Also he is ugly but has a special breath which throw to girls to make them fell in love and sleeps with him. It has a powerful magnetism that attracts young and middle-aged women. The Trauco carries a small stone-headed hatchet that he uses to strike trees in the forest to symbolize his sexual potency. Whoever the Trauco chooses will go to him, even if she is sleeping, and fall enraptured at his feet. No woman can resist his magical attraction, all have sexual intercourse with him. Men of Chiloé fear the Trauco, as his gaze can be deadly. When a single woman is pregnant and no one steps forward as the father, people assume that the Trauco is the father. Because the Trauco is irresistible, the woman is considered blameless. The Trauco is sometimes invoked to explain sudden or unwanted pregnancies, especially in unmarried women.
My maternal grandma always tells this story, and to this day, she still gets visibly uncomfortable while speaking about it. Late 1950s, Mexico City. Older sister is about to marry, and asks grandma to accompany her as she delivers the invitations for street neighbors. Last stop is a vecindad in front of their house. A vecindad is a house divided in apartments, where a friend lives. Friend is babysitting her younger brother. A 4-year-old. Grandma and aunt keep talking with their friend for hours. Night falls. Around what grandma says was around 8 p.m. Their friend's eyes go wide. Mind. Friend was in the door, while grandma and aunt turn their backs to the street. Aunt asks what's going on. Friend can only mutter stuff and is freaking out, while pointing at something behind them. Friend's little bro starts screaming. Friend gathers enough breath to talk and yells, "Diablo!" Grandma and aunt turn around and almost faint. Behind them, in the middle of the street, stands what grandma still describes as a demon. Over 6 feet tall, blackish skin like a snake's, featureless aside from 2 red eyes and a horn, growing out of its face and curving behind the head. Grandma and aunt run inside the house and close the door shut, start praying and screaming for help. Some tenants show up and take to the streets, armed and searching for the creature. Friend's little bro dies a week later in his sleep. To this day, grandma says the demon went for the kid's soul. My aunt passed away in 2010, but her house is huge and most people in my family have experienced supernatural stuff in there. There's at least 4 ghosts that have been identified. A little girl that appears in the kitchen, an old lady who haunts a shack in the rooftop, something that falls from the main stairs, and a pig that squeals and grunts in the laundry room during October and November. I never heard her tell the stories, but my mother and her sisters used to talk about their mom, grandma, talking about seeing demons. Demons. Frightening beyond words. Also, a friend for grade school, who came from Poland via Greece and French Canada, to central Canada, pointed out an old 3-story house in our hometown once. He said his mother talked about seeing a demon in a window on the top floor. He described her horror in retelling the event, that it projected through him and physically affected me. I was scared. And he didn't exactly have a flair for speaking at that point, English being his 4th language at that point.
The Lechuza, or owl, is apparently an evil spirit, or sometimes a bruja. Its presence always is followed or preceded by death. They're often heard seen right before a loved one dies, and or right after, as if to mock the family and friends. I have a little short story of an encounter. My aunt, who was in her early 40s, was pregnant. She knew the risks but wanted another child. Late in the pregnancy, she found out the child would be born with Down syndrome and other possible ailments. When he was born, it was medical complications after complications. Then after a month at University of California, San Francisco Medical Center, his health improved and was all set to be sent home. The last week he was in the hospital, a woman visited the child. Apparently she claimed to be an aunt. She brought with her a stuffed animal, and she played with it above the baby and left it there. Then she left. Needless to say, the child's health worsened. His liver started failing. He was having respiratory problems, just awful stuff. He died a few days later. The wake was held at his parents' home. Everything was normal and sad. Then people started crowding around the windows and rushing outside. On one of the trees outside the house, there was a barn owl perched peering into the house. Laughing, cackling, and when it was shooed away, it came right back to laugh and mock on the tree branch. Everyone knew what it was. It wasn't until my uncle brought out his shotgun and fired a shot at it that it flew away. Later that night everyone could hear it fly overhead, screeching and laughing.
Tlahuelpuchi. In rural Tlaxcala, Mexico, the vampire witches known as Tlahuelpuchi are much feared. At least 100 legends about Tlahuelpuchi exist. The Tlahuelpuchi was a person believed to possess magical powers, including the power to transform themselves into one of several animals and in that form attack and suck the blood of humans. They can be of either gender, but usually are females, who are considered to be the more bloodthirsty and evil of the two. Elements found in Tlahuelpuchi can be traced to ancient Aztec goddesses. Their archetype was further modified to include influences from the witches of Spain when the country was converted to Christianity. Tlahuelpuchis are born into their fate. They cannot transmit or teach their powers to others. They are independent agents of evil, but will do the bidding of higher evil forces, such as the devil. When a Tlahuelpuchi is born, it cannot be distinguished from an ordinary infant. Differences do not emerge until puberty, at which point their supernatural powers such as shape-shifting suddenly manifest. For females, this often occurs with the onset of the menses. When the powers manifest, the Tlahuelpuchis of both sexes begin to have a lifelong, uncontrollable urge to drink human blood. They will drink the blood of any human but have a marked preference for that of infants between the ages of 3 and 6 months, but no younger. They prowl about at night, particularly between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m., but will operate during the day if their blood craving is extreme. Tlahuelpuchis are not out every night, but only when they experience their uncontrollable blood cravings, which ranges from 1 to 4 times a month. They are more active during rainy and cold weather. Finding a Tlahuelpuchis to be among them causes families a great deal of unhappiness and shame. They will go to great lengths to cover it up to avoid being ostracized by the community. It's said Tlahuelpuchis cannot attack members of their own families, unless they reveal their secret. Although Tlahuelpuchis cannot transmit their powers to others of their own volition, if they are killed, their powers go into the killer. This places the family in the position of reluctant accomplices. The most common animal into which the witches transformed themselves was a turkey, but animals as varied as fleas, cats, dogs, and buzzards were reported. When shape-shifted, they are limited to the abilities of that particular creature, and cannot make it perform in magical ways. With one exception, they can make turkeys fly. When in animal form, they give off a luminescence or phosphorescence that is a telltale sign of their identity. They steal into a home as a mist, sometimes luminous, that seeps under doors and windowsills, or through keyholes, or they crawl in as an insect. Once inside, they shapeshift into a turkey or buzzard, and hypnotize the occupants into a deep sleep so that they can carry out their attacks. The Tlahuelpuchi also have hypnotic power over individuals and could cause them to kill themselves, primarily by having them walk to a high place and jump to their death. They might kill or injure domestic and farm animals and could ruin crops. Thus many types of misfortune were attributed to the work of witches. For obvious reasons Tlahuelpuchi lived incognito in the communities. Belief in the Tlahuelpuchi is widespread in Mexico and continues to this day in rural areas. Cases of Tlahuelpuchi attacks have been recorded in modern times, some resulting in the trial and execution of the alleged vampire. As recently as 1954, the state of Tlaxcala passed a law requiring that infants reportedly killed by witchcraft had to be referred to medical authorities. While in almost every extended Tlahuepuchi family there will be reports of multiple bloodsuckings over the course of generations, the accusations of bloodsucking witchcraft that result in trial and execution historically have not been common, and have declined considerably since the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The last known execution of a Tlahuelpuchi, a woman, occurred in 1973.
Okay, another Mexican guy here. Sorry for my broken English. This happened to my grandma when she was a little girl. She is from Zacatecas. 8 to 9 years old. She was walking around on a street at night. In that time it was safe. Before that, his mom had scolded her for something. She keep walking until a black dog appear in front. The dog starts to growl. She is frozen and don't know how to do. Then she hear how a dog growls behind her. She turn back and see a white dog. The white dog keep in front her, like if he is protect her. So, the dogs start to fight. My grandma told me that the street was full of blood. Too much blood for 2 dogs. Then my grandma get out of her shock and run away. Told her story to her mom. Mom says that it's happened was her protector against the pure evil. There's a story about these animals. The white dogs keep safe to the kids and the black dogs try to hurt them, but if you have been a good kid, the white dog appear to protect when the black dog comes out.
This particularly, at least to me, disturbing tale happened to me about 4 years ago. After this I finally got my shit together and worked my ass off to make enough money and move from my hometown. Anyway, enjoy, I guess. Live in rural area. Basic stores are present, but distant from each other. Morning Saturday. Preparing to go out and hang out with my GF. As usual, the lousy and drunken old man next door is making a fuss fighting with his family. Ignore the lousy fuckers. Go out, take a bus to the city and hang out. Late at night I return to my pueblo on the bus. Really tired, got asleep on the way. Suddenly I woke up. Oh she. I don't recognize this place, probably missed my bus stop. Panic. Drop from the bus in the next stop. Actually I recognize the place. I see the town's cantina, a bar, for you gringos. Realize that I dropped about 6 stops earlier, just didn't recognize the place very well because I was sleepy. Have to walk now all the way to my home. Walking in the dark. Hear something strange. Like some kind of crunch or munch, like an animal eating. Ignore it. As I walk the noise gets louder. Ignore it. Eventually see something big and pitch black, like even darker than the darkness of the night, if you can even make sense of it. Cannot ignore it now. Try to see with my flashlight what it was. I see this big as black dog. Red big eyes now staring at me. I see its big fangs as it continues to eat. My mind is trying to make sense of the situation. I try to move slowly to not disturb even more the beast. Carefully I silently look down to see what it is eating. Guts, blood, bones. But not any kind of guts and bones, human guts and bones. My drunken neighbor's guts and bones, or what seems to remain from him. At this point, only part of his face with a clear horror expression remains intact. Unlimited nope works. I try to move away, slowly walking backwards. My feet do their thing and I trip and feel down. Despair like never before, fuck my life. Try to get up and run. Too late, the dog beast is now over my chest. Barking really loud on my face at the start. Is so fucking heavy, awful smell, I feel how its feet is pining me down completely. It sounds really angry, now making growls while inspecting my face with its nose. At this moment I was literally shitting on my pants thinking how painful and horrible my death is going to be at the pawns of this thing. Crying and with the nose full of mocos, I consider trying to get it off me somehow and fight grabbing stones or something, but is so big and strong that any resistance would be futile. I think over and over again that I just don't want to die like this. Then after some minutes that seemed like an eternity it stopped sniffing me and jumped off me. The beast just walked away. I stayed on the ground for about 2 minutes not sure of what happened, just glad that I was still alive. Finally panic and adrenaline starts again and I grab my flashback from the ground. Try to locate the beast on the dark road but it's gone. The corpse, or rather head and guts, are gone too. Finally got my shit together, on the literal and psychological sense, and run non-stop towards my home. Now in home I go directly to my bathroom and I see myself on the mirror. Full of scratches, blood, and even some meat chunks on my face. Honestly want to cry, but I'm too shocked. I just shower like 3 times and start praying and watching some TV, can't sleep. Next day the neighborhood is awfully quiet. Mom is concerned since she saw me last night, but I couldn't talk to her. I try to explain it to her, but she is not completely buying it yet. Days later the neighbors next door told us that their drunken old man got missing and asked us if we knew anything. Nope. Finally the old man appeared mutilated, like severely mutilated, on some cafe plantation not very far from where I saw the thing. Nope. Mom and I are both really freaking out. We talked with some other people of confidence about the incident. All of them draw the same conclusion: what I saw that day was the Cadejo. From that day, I made my #1 priority to get out from that fucking place along with my mom, not matter how much I had to work. Now for some context, on my country the Cadejo is like some kind of hellish dog that kind of either torments or protects lonely people when they walk on lonely roads. Mostly it appears to drunken people. Now on my personal judgment, if you ask me, the only thing I can draw from this is that I was lucky that the beast was somewhat full, and that's why it didn't eat me too on the spot. My mom insisted that it didn't harm me because I was a good person, unlike the drunken old man which abused of his family. To me simply there is some kind of giant dog or wolf or something feeding of the lonely people on rural pueblos. In any case, call a friend or chicken or whatever, but I am never returning to a rural area to find out.
Mexican here, from Mexico City. Apparently my grandpa fought some kind of monk ghost when he was younger. Sorry for shit English. Grandpa and grandma got married, and they had a kid, my aunt. She was 2 months old. Grandpa had where to live, but he wanted a house of his own, so he just bought some land and materials to build one. He and his brother more or less finished 3 rooms. They start living there. They build the house in the middle of nowhere. In fact, they were the first to arrive there and make their own house. Now there are shitloads of people, a school and a church near, etc. Looked like a fucking desert, no people, no nothing except themselves. One night they're sleeping and the baby doesn't shut up. He finds out why. A goddamn monk just enters the room and starts walking where grandma is lying with the baby. Like, a fucking shadow in a robe just entered. He can't see his face or hands or anything, it was just a lump dressed like a monk. Hell no. Grandpa just tackles the thing to the ground and chases it out before it can touch grandma or the baby. Grandpa just stays outside waiting for that thing to come out. Sun rises and his brother arrives. Tells him what happened. They do some white magic shit and the monk never came back. He always told me this story, mind you, this was like in 1960 something.
I'm from Mission, Texas. La Lechuza is a story I've been told many times. Different variations on them. In some they are just omens of death or just bad news. In others they are witches able to turn into giant owls. One story I heard is of a man and his son driving down on a lonely back road heading to Rio Grande City. As they approached a railroad bridge, they noticed a large owl sitting on top. As soon they got close to it, the owl swooped down on them. After they went under the bridge and came out the other side, the young boy moved closer to his dad. It was at that point the dad grabbed the son's knee hard. The boy looked to his right and noticed the truck's door open. There hanging on to the door was an old lady. He looked up at his dad, who just told him to look straight ahead. The boy looked back at the door, but the woman was gone and the door was closed. Suddenly standing in the middle of the road was the old woman. The dad hit the brakes but was unable to stop in time. They slammed into the old woman. Both of them got out to check. She was nowhere to be seen. Just blood and feathers. They both got into the truck and drove off. They never drove down that road again. Here's another Lechuza story. There was this rich man who was said to be very cruel, evil by those who knew him. This included his employees. He was also very greedy and never really spent most of his money. Every day after work, this man would always go to a bar and drink. He was also known to be a womanizer. He would get home from work in the early evening, often drunk, and expected his maid to have dinner ready. This was his usual routine every day. One evening he arrived at home to find a large owl perched on top of his house. He picked up some rocks from around his driveway and started to throw it at the owl. Somehow he missed, but the owl started to swoop down on him. After a while, the owl left and he went inside. For the next several days, the same thing would happen. He would get attacked and then it would leave. Every time he would finally get inside his home, his maid would come out to see what had happened. She never saw a thing. One night he awoke to scratching sounds coming from the window. He turned on a bedside lamp and saw this owl trying to force its way through the slightly open window. He ran and grabbed the broom and used it to force the owl back out. He ordered his maid to keep his bedroom window closed no matter what after that. One day, his maid told the man she had to go out of town to visit her sick mother. He reluctantly allowed her to go, but first she had to prepare his dinner before she left. He got home from work and found the house empty. Usually she would still be there and finishing up his dinner, but she was gone and his dinner was waiting for him on the table. He was drunk and fully stuffed, so he decided to call it a night. He crawled into bed and failed to notice that the maid had left the window open. Something she would do to let some fresh air in. He woke up in the morning hours and after his eyes adjusted to the dark he saw what looked like someone standing at the foot of his bed. He turned on the lamp and realized it was the owl. He looked over to his window and saw that it was wide open. He cursed his maid. As he attempted to get up and run out of there, the owl let out a loud screech and landed on his chest. It buried its claws into its chest. For several days the man failed to show up at work. This was something that he would do from time to time, so his coworkers didn't think the worst. His maid finally came back. When she got to the house, she noticed his car outside. She had her own key, so she went inside and went about her business. After some time she went and knocked on the man's door. There was no response. So she went inside and saw a gruesome sight. She called the police. They discovered lots of feathers all over the room. The man's blood was everywhere. His chest was torn open, but according to the coroner that wasn't what killed him. It was a fright that ended up. I remember being told this story and afterwards wondered if maybe the maid was La Lechuza all the time. Since he would run into the house after the owl left and the maid would come out a little later to see what was going on. The window being left open.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.